The night my cousin stood up at Thanksgiving dinner and announced, to everyone, including my aunt's book club friends who had no business being there, that I was basically a cautionary tale. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, refilled my wine, and started making a very quiet list in my head. I know that probably sounds calculated. Maybe it was. But you have to understand what the 2 years leading up to that moment looked like and how much I had quietly absorbed before I finally decided I was done absorbing. I'm 31 years old. I work in UX design at a mid-sized tech firm in Austin, Texas. I'm not rich by any Silicon Valley standard, but I make good money, solid, stable career track money that I earned by working 60-hour weeks in my mid-20s while my cousin was still asking her mom to Venmo her for coffee. I own a 1-bedroom condo. I drive a car I like. I have a savings account that would make 23-year-old me cry with relief. I'm also single. No kids, no boyfriend, no girlfriend, no situationship, nothing. Not because I'm broken or bitter or secretly desperate. Just because I've been focused and honestly, because I haven't met anyone who made me want to reorganize my life around them. My family, specifically my mother's sister's side, has never fully accepted this as a reasonable position for a woman my age. My aunt, my mom's older sister, has 2 daughters. My cousin Serena is 2 years older than me and married with a baby, which in my family's social ecosystem essentially makes her a saint. Her younger sister, my cousin Paige, is 24 and still figuring things out, which the family treats as endearing because she's the baby and also because she has a boyfriend. So, at least, she's on the right track. And then there's me. I started helping my aunt financially about 2.5 years ago. Right after my uncle had a health scare that put him out of work for almost 4 months. Nobody asked me directly. I just knew the situation was tight, and I was in a position to help, so I did. I covered their power bill for 2 months. I bought groceries twice when I knew things were thin. I didn't make a thing of it. That's just how I was raised. But something happens when you help quietly. People stop noticing that you're helping and start expecting that you will. By the time my uncle was back on his feet, I had somehow become the family's informal safety net. My aunt started calling me when her car insurance renewal came up and the number felt a little high this month. Serena texted me when her baby shower venue deposit was due and she and her husband were a little stretched. Paige asked me once, and then twice, and then as a matter of course, whether I could spot her rent because her paycheck was hitting weird. Over the course of roughly 27 months, I calculated. Afterward, in a spreadsheet I made at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night with a glass of wine and a feeling I can only describe as overdue reckoning, that I had transferred or covered or quietly absorbed approximately $63,000 across that side of my family. Let me say that again, $63,000. Paige's rent, 9 times. My aunt's car insurance for 14 months. Serena's baby shower deposit. Then her hospital bill copay that insurance didn't fully cover. Then the new crib because the one they had wasn't up to current safety standards. A plane ticket for my aunt to visit her sister in Phoenix because she hadn't had a trip in years. 1 month of my cousin's gym membership because she said working out was the only thing keeping her sane postpartum, and I didn't have the heart to say no. Not once, not a single time, did anyone ask about my life and actually listen to the answer. They asked, technically, in the way you ask someone, "How are you?" when you're already walking past them. Still doing that computer stuff? Any news on the relationship front? That last one usually came with a tilt of the head and an expression that sat somewhere between pity and impatience, like I was a project that kept missing its deadline. My aunt once told me, while I was helping her unload groceries I had paid for, that she worried about me ending up alone. I said I wasn't worried. She said, "That's what people say until it's too late." Then she handed me a bag of frozen peas to put away and changed the subject to Serena's baby weight. I let it go. I always let it go. The Thanksgiving thing caught me off guard because I genuinely thought we had reached a kind of equilibrium. I had scaled back the financial help over the previous few months. Not cut it off, just scaled it back. Partly because I had started putting more into my retirement account. Partly because I was saving up to take a real trip for the first time in 3 years. and partly because I had quietly started to wonder if any of this was actually helping anyone or just making everyone comfortable with not helping themselves. I drove up from Austin to my aunt's house in the Dallas suburbs. I brought 2 bottles of wine and a pie I made from scratch because that's the kind of thing I do. I was looking forward to it, honestly. I like my family in general. I like the chaos of a full table and my uncle's bad jokes and the specific smell of my aunt's kitchen. What I did not expect was my cousin Serena, 3 glasses of wine in, using me as a punchline. It started with someone asking around the table what everyone was grateful for. Normal enough. Serena said she was grateful for her husband, her baby, her house. Then she looked at me, and she got this little smile, the one I've seen her use when she thinks she's being funny. And she said, "And I'm grateful I figured my life out before 30, unlike some people." A couple of people laughed. A couple people didn't. My aunt said Serena in a tone that was more amused than corrective. I smiled. Serena, encouraged, kept going. She said something about how it was impressive, actually, that I was still so independent at my age. The word independent, wrapped in air quotes, I could practically see floating above the table. She said her friend group had been talking about women who just can't settle down and whether it was a fear of commitment thing or just pickiness. She was talking about me. At Thanksgiving dinner, in front of my aunt's book club friends who I had never met, I looked at my plate. I looked at the wine in my glass. I thought about the $63,000. I thought about all the times I had wired money without being asked, shown up without being invited, and helped without being thanked. And I thought, I am done, not dramatically, not in a movie way where I stand up and flip the table and deliver a monologue. I just decided, quietly. The way you decide something you've actually been deciding for a long time and finally just admit it. I finished dinner. I helped clear the plates. I hugged my aunt goodbye and said the food was wonderful because it was. I drove back to my hotel. I'd gotten a room because I never loved the idea of sleeping on an air mattress at 31, and I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my phone. I didn't call anyone. I didn't text anyone in the family. I just opened my banking app and my Venmo and my Zelle account, and I went through every recurring transfer, every saved contact, every autopay I had set up that touched someone in that household, and I removed every single one. Paige's Zelle contact, removed. My aunt's autopay for the car insurance add-on I'd been covering, cancelled. The standing Venmo transfer I'd set up for Serena's household emergencies, gone. It took maybe 20 minutes. Then I went to sleep. I want to be honest about something. I didn't feel powerful doing it. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired in a way that had been building for a long time, and I felt something that might have been relief, or might have been grief, or might have been both at the same time. Because I did love these people. I still love them. That was never the part that was in question. What was in question was whether love was supposed to mean being the family ATM, while also being the family cautionary tale. I got the first text from Paige 3 days later. Rent was coming up. Was I still good for this month? I texted back, "Hey, I've actually had to pull back on the extra financial stuff for a while. I need to focus on my own savings. Hope you understand." She left me on read for 4 days and then sent back a single word, "Wow." The call from my aunt came on a Wednesday evening when I was in the middle of making dinner. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was 8 minutes long. I won't play it back word for word, but the highlights were, she was shocked. She thought we were close. She didn't understand what she had done to deserve this. And at some point she mentioned that family is supposed to take care of each other, which I found ironic in a way I didn't have the energy to articulate. I called her back the next evening when I had eaten dinner and walked around my neighborhood for 30 minutes and felt ready to be calm. I told her I loved her. I told her I'd been glad to help during the hard stretch with my uncle's health. I told her, as clearly and quietly as I could, that things had shifted and I needed to take care of my own financial priorities for a while. She asked me if this was about Thanksgiving. I said, "I think it's been building for a while." She asked me if Serena's comment had upset me. I said, "Serena said what she said in front of people I'd never met, so yes." There was a long pause, and then my aunt said, "And I will remember this for a very long time." She was just joking, sweetheart. You've always been so sensitive. I took a breath. I said, the way people joke about you tells you exactly how they see you. I'd rather know than not know. And then I said I had to go, and I hung up. I won't pretend the next few weeks were easy. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with realizing that some of what felt like closeness was actually just proximity to your usefulness. My mom called me after she heard from my aunt, and I walked her through the whole thing, and she was quiet for a long time, and then she said, I'm sorry nobody said thank you, which was the right thing to say, and I cried a little. Serena never reached out, not an apology, not a text, nothing, which in some ways was its own kind of answer. Paige eventually sent a longer message, a week or so after the one word, wow. It was defensive at first. She talked about how she was going through a lot and how she didn't know I had conditions attached to helping her. I wrote back once, calmly, and told her I didn't think basic gratitude was a condition so much as a baseline, and that I wished her well. I haven't heard back. Here's what I want to say to the Thanksgiving version of myself, sitting at that table with a smile fixed on her face. You were not being dramatic. You were not being sensitive. You were watching someone use you as a punchline while your contribution to her comfort was sitting invisibly underneath every single thing on that table, and the silence you kept out of grace was not something she earned. And here is what I actually know now. On the other side of all of it, I do not need someone to validate that my life has value. I have a career I've built from scratch. I have a home I bought myself. I have savings that exist because I worked for them, and I protected them, and I made hard choices to keep them growing. I am 31, and I am single, and I have never, not once, felt like something was missing because of it. What I felt was missing was simple, being seen, not celebrated, not applauded, just seen. The week after I cut off the transfers, I booked that trip I'd been delaying for 3 years. 2 weeks in Portugal solo. I walked around Lisbon for hours every day without checking my phone, ate dinner at restaurants I picked entirely based on what I felt like, took a train to the coast, and sat on a cliff and watched the ocean for a long time without having to explain myself to anyone. On the last night, I sat in a little wine bar in the Alfama neighborhood, and I wrote in my journal for the first time in probably 2 years, and what I wrote was embarrassingly simple. I feel like myself. That's it. That's what $63,000 and 27 months of invisible labor had cost me. I'm not angry anymore. I want to be clear about that. Anger takes up space I'd rather use for other things, but I am different in a way that I think is permanent. I understand now, with a clarity I couldn't have arrived at any other way, that generosity is only generosity when it's given freely. And that freely doesn't mean silently, and it doesn't mean indefinitely, and it certainly doesn't mean at the cost of your own dignity. I am single. I am successful. I am, despite everything they implied to the contrary, genuinely happy. And the next time someone sits across from me at a table and mistakes my kindness for an apology, I'll be ready. Not with anger, just with the very quiet knowledge of exactly what I am worth, and exactly what I am no longer available to provide.